I want to welcome Chad Collins, first of all, the president of the Lovejoy School Board, and we have our interim superintendent, Dr. Dennis Womack. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
For those who are joining us and don't know me, I'm Carrie McCormick. I'm part of the Grisak group here in the community. So first off, a sincere thank you for being here. Climate's a little hot right now. A lot is going on in our community, and hopefully we believe through this outlet we'll be able to separate a lot of fact from fiction, what's true, what's not true, and ultimately clear up what's going on out there. You both are coming off the heels of, I think, one of the most talked about school board meetings that I can remember in a very long time. And I know a lot of work and time went into that school board meeting with presentations, different people speaking to the audience about what's going on, why it's happening, and some proposed ideas on how to fix that. So why was it important for the two of you, just a few days after doing all of that work and speaking to the community, to come here and do this interview?
Yeah. First, Lori, I will start with sharing that our community is so important. This is a collaboration between our school district and our community all the time. And I know as a board, we value the opinions and thoughts of our constituents, no doubt about it, no matter if they're a taxpayer without children in the district to our parents that have kids in the district or in the future will. There is probably a lot of miscommunication out there and maybe not understanding how those budgets work and some of the dynamics around that maybe we can help share today. But we know anytime you have some tough decisions to make, you're not going to be able to please everybody. And unfortunately, that's the case in this potential decision that the board will take next week. But at the same time, we do it through the lens of how can we help as many students as possible. All our 4,000 students are extremely important in how we get there to provide them the best education experience.
The only thing I would add is that one of the items that was brought to our attention is not everybody reads the newsletter we put out or the board brief that we put out. And so having another opportunity or medium to push out the message, and if we can hit a different target audience with that, then we obviously want to take that opportunity.
So let's start kind of with just the foundation of why we're here in the first place. The district, like many districts all over Texas really, are facing some difficult financial decisions. Lovejoy, for example, it's $6 million deficit that we're facing right now. So for those who don't understand why other districts and this district are in this situation today, how do you best explain why we're in this situation?
Yeah. Well, I can give you the kind of the broad stroke for all districts across the state. Number one, when they were budgeting for the 2021 school year, they may not have had a lot of insight into where COVID would lead. Some of us thought it would be over by the time August rolled around and we started school. So when they were budgeting, they budgeted on the number of kids that they were anticipating that they would have in their district for that full year. And that's not uncommon from what Lovejoy did. You've probably heard on the news quite a bit that districts are missing kids, and they're not missing. What it is they're not coming to school. They've chosen to either unenroll and homeschool, go to private school, or move out of the state, one or the other. For us, that's about 200 kids that we had budgeted for this school year. Based on our demographic projections, we hired the staff and had the staff to educate them, and yet they didn't come. We didn't see the growth or the return of some kids. It's not a full 200 that chose to stay out because of COVID or whatever the case may be. It was really the lack of growth as well on top of the kids that did choose to stay out. So I think that's what part of this is for all districts across Texas is the lower enrollment piece of it. And then secondly, it's the additional expense that we've incurred for having COVID and the need to keep kids safe, keep our staff safe, the different barriers that we had to put in place, the different cleaning regimen that we had to put in place, the additional staffing in terms of overtime that it has taken to just have school as normal. And then really starting a completely brand new school district online called the virtual school. That has had a significant impact. So if you put all of those together, just for this school year, we're looking at about $3.1 million loss from those expenses, the decline in enrollment, the additional COVID expenses, as well as doing virtual learning.
So the total $6 million, though, is the goal, because I know that the district is coming up currently with ways to resolve that issue. Is the goal to have that deficit made up by the start of next school year, or is there a particular time frame in mind?
So the $3 million loss for current year, we will be done with that at the end of June.
Okay.
So the $6 million is for next school year. So it's not $3 million plus another $3 million. It's the $3 million. We're already in the hole.
Okay.
Next year we're projected at $6 million, and that's based on bringing some kids back. So our enrollment's coming back up. It's also factoring in some things that were really out of our control, and that is, number one, is our loss of fast growth funding from the state. So the state takes the top 25% of growth districts and fund them a little bit higher. That's $1 million for us that we will lose for next year, as well as the any additional expenses that we might incur for our loss of tuition, and which we currently bring in about $1 million in tuition funding from transfer students. But in our budget development, we were planning on part way of expanding that to increase our overall revenue. And so now that there's been 2 bills filed in the House and the Senate that rescinds our ability to charge tuition, that has $1 million impact instantly, but it also removed our ability to increase that program and increase the revenue from it.
Yeah, that program has been a great thing for our district, because those funds have helped to enhance the education experience that we have. We pay more to educate our kids in Lovejoy because we give them different types of programming. 8-period day, double blocking math and English. There's several things, but it costs more than what the normal districts get as far as just basic education. So if I could just add one other thing around the COVID piece for this year, there's a lot of communication in our community around understanding if we get COVID relief, any of those dollars, does that help us for the next year? The reality is all it would do is reduce the dollars that we're going to have to take out of our savings account to cover the misses for this year based on those things that Dr. Womack shared. So then we exit and then head into the next year. So those 2 big legislative issues, that's $2 million that it's kind of a blind side for us, frankly. And then I think we also need to share about House Bill 3, which is in the last legislative session. Lovejoy ISD lost $331 per student on average compared to what we were funded before. So you add that, that's another $1.5 million for us that gone. So there you have a $3.5 million just right there alone. That's part of that $6 million.
And is it true because of House Bill 3, Lovejoy was actually more impacted than other North Texas school districts?
Absolutely, because House Bill 3 really funds districts based on their percentage of economically disadvantaged students. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. However, if you are one of the few districts in Texas with a small economically disadvantaged population, for Lovejoy it's been about 3% or less over time, then it does have a larger impact on you.
So let's talk about finances. We're obviously right in the depths of this right now. It seems to be one of the most talked about topics within the community, whether it's face-to-face or on social media, online. Do you think it's also one of the more misunderstood topics for Lovejoy?
I absolutely do, because it's so, and I don't say this to be rude or to think anyone's not intelligent, but the finance system for public education in Texas is very difficult to wrap your mind or brain around. We have to staff based on how many kids are enrolled, but you're only funded by how many kids actually attend school.
Right.
And so there's already a delta there. Then the changing from House Bill 3 from prior home values to current home values, we used to call it living on the lag, where you lived on the lag of that increase in pardon me, revenue from the additional valuation of homes. Well, that went away, which was a savings to the state. At the bottom line, just to make it simplistic, our communication has been that we get on average about $8,300 per kid on average.
No matter what our taxes are.
That's right.
No.
And so as your property values go up, the amount that the state has to make up in between what we raise locally just goes down. And that's has always been an issue for all districts and continues to be. So our local citizens are funding about 50 to 60% of the education, and the state is decreasing theirs as your values go up.
I want to touch on a topic you just brought up a couple of minutes ago, this COVID relief fund, the CARES Act. And I only say that because a lot of people are talking about it. So I want to make sure everybody is on the same page and we're all understanding this. So there's a hashtag campaign as we speak to send it out to the legislature in Austin. Where is our money? We're due this money. Are they wasting their time by doing that? Or is there a possibility that could happen?
No, to us, that's not a waste of time whatsoever. We need all of our constituents screaming for any funding that we could possibly get that really should be in our coffers, if you will. What that will do is that will help bolster our general fund. That's our savings account for our operation side of our budget, right? So our maintenance and operation side, you have a budget, the general fund. We need to bolster that because that comes into play later in the year as we pass a new budget, and before the state starts to pay us, we still have to be paying our teachers and our employees. So it actually helps fund the cash flow, which is very important, which is another reason why this year having a big reduction, about $3 million, as Dr. Womack said, that's significant. That means our savings goes from $9 million to $6 million. Well, that $6 million becomes pretty close to not at a great position for that cash flow piece, right? And so we want to bolster that. That allows us in the future. And so every budget decision we're making, we're looking short term, but we're also looking long term. So any of those funds that we can possibly get, and the sooner the better, we want it in our savings. So
that brings me to my next question. In a perfect case scenario, how much are we due, or do you think we could get?
That's a great question.
I could tell you how much we've spent, and it would be great if we could get reimbursed for that. Obviously, we've spent $3 million or had a hit of $3 million. We actually have expenditures not tied to personnel units of $1.6 million, just out of the end of last year when COVID first hit, March 2020, through to where we are today. So if we could get fully the $3 million, that'd be great. If we could get 1.6, that'd be awesome. If they deliver the funds or release the funds as they did during the summer, then we're probably only going to get maybe $250,000.
Are you optimistic?
Yeah. To be honest with you, sitting in this seat, as our board has done for years and years, it is you just don't know what you're going to get out of Austin. Yeah. Just with legislation, with how every 2 years the state formulas change. And so we're constantly have to keep our knees bent about what we will get, when we'll get it. And it's not always equitable. And so so am I confident? I'm confident that hopefully we'll get something. Am I confident that we'll get anywhere near $3 million? No, not whatsoever. Unfortunately, I'm not confident that based on history. That's what history has told me.
Same sentiment?
Yes.
Okay. As I said at the beginning of the interview, I've been looking online, getting some questions from the community so they can get their questions answered. And I hope that is a win-win for both parties, because we want you to be able to explain, and we want the community to feel like they're heard, especially because at the school board meetings, I know due to rules, we're not allowed to be responded to once the community asks those questions. All right, first up. What will the ISD do with the extra money if the COVID funding is distributed after the district makes any changes or cuts to the district? I want to make sure that money is earmarked for the right things.
Well, that's a great question. It goes back to, I'll answer that one. Where it would go, it would only be able to be applied to this school year. Okay. And our current deficit based on COVID-related relief or our expenditures. So it would only go to this year and would literally just go to help replenish some of what we're going to have to take out of savings.
Okay.
In the general fund.
Another question. Is the ISD and the board willing to wait until the legislature votes on the bill before making any decisions about cuts and changes to the school district? This person wrote in that the House is set to meet on the 22nd. I know that the next school board meeting is the 19th, so just a couple days after that. And the Senate is set to vote a few days, the Wednesday after the House. So is that something the district and the board would consider waiting on if, in fact, those dates are correct?
No, and here's why. The legislature doesn't gavel out until the end of May. We have to issue contracts to teachers at the beginning of May. So we can't wait to let the House and the Senate have a vote and then go to conference committee to work it out, which always happens every legislative year. And then it goes all the way to the end of May. We will have already issued obligated contracts to 85% of our budget. And so if we wait, then we really tie ourselves into a knot. We have little flexibility after we issue contracts. By law, we're required to issue them before these guys even adopt a budget.
So you have your own set of rules that you also have to follow. That makes sense. All right, one more question about finances, and then we'll move on to the next topic. If you have CPAs, CFPs, and a multitude of other C-suite professionals who have offered to help, none related directly to LISD employees, the foundation, or the board, why doesn't Lovejoy take them up on the offer of a no-charge, in-depth audit and development of a plan for financial cleanup? Historically, the district's response, school finances are too complicated. We waste too much time trying to help them understand how the accounting works, and they come back with the same insights as Shay Adams, which of course is the district CFO. Your response?
Maybe I'll start with that and then I'll turn it to Dr. Womack. Okay. I think what I have observed through my years of being in the district and watching budgets and being part of budgets, we have convened, I don't know how many committees through the years looking at facilities planning, finances, revenue generation. We've got some really brilliant people within the district. We also have some really smart people on our board. And we have some really smart people inside the district as well. And so when you couple all of those together, we have tried a number of different things. And because of maybe legality, feasibility, we've been able to adopt some of those things. Some of the best practices you see in our district today came from ideas within our community. So the notion that there's not an exploratory, going out and getting some of those experts as well to give another vantage point, I don't think that's accurate from what I have seen through the years. There's many, many people I've worked with that have been part of some of those committees through the years, and including even recently. So that's my take.
The short answer is we know exactly where we're overspending. We're funded as a basic school district. We're funded just like any other school district, except a little lower than most of the Collin County districts. We know exactly where we spend the money above and beyond what we're funded. And those are the programs that we try to protect. That's what Mr. Collins was talking about earlier about the 8-period day, the double blocking of English and math, the conference structure that we have for our staff, all of those cost us more than what the revenue from the state is. And so we can identify that. We know exactly what it is. We can cut all of that. But that makes up what Lovejoy is. That is the bread and butter of the Lovejoy academic program that we provide, and the experience and enrichments that we provide to our kids. There's no mystery about it. That's what it is.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
We have dissected every which way things to cut. I'll give you a great example.
Sure.
We get all the time, we've got to cut administration, right? Our administration is heavy. The reality is it's not heavy. It's actually flat. In our organization, we have a superintendent. We have an interim superintendent right now, but Dr. Womack on his day job actually runs operations for the district. Operations are the facilities, the technology, food, services, maintenance, transportation. You have to have somebody who's an expert in that world. You also have to have somebody who's an expert to work with our 300, 400 teachers in the district. And so you have to have somebody who's head of curriculum. You have to have a CFO that run the business piece, the financial piece, of which we are every year. We win the awards of being the most transparent, the most fiscally responsible. Doesn't mean that people will agree with everything we fund. Like some people may not want an 8th period day, but most of our community does. And so we cut exactly where we think we can cut as far away from the classroom as possible. And that's really, really important to us. So
I think something on that note to point out that I think is important just in general for everybody to know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the school board can only hire and fire one person, and that's essentially the superintendent. So when people are saying, why can't the board cut admin positions, et cetera, that's not even something that the board is allowed to do. Am I correct?
That's correct. We can't go directly do that. What we would do, in case in point right now, is we gave guidance to the district starting back even in fall, knowing that we're going through the hardship like every other district around COVID. We said, what we need let's start trimming now budgets. Let's do a hiring freeze. So we give guidance, but we're not telling them exactly. Now, if there's a position that we can't freeze, that we have to absolutely have somebody in, we're going to fill it. But we give guidance. And then same thing, we shared with Dennis and our administration that unfortunately we're going to pull out as much in administration costs as we possibly can. Now, it's going to hurt. To be honest with you, it's going to hurt the health of our district. When you don't have the support for some of these leaders, we don't have a lot of middle management that you find in a lot of other districts. And districts call positions by different names. So it's hard to go at apples to apples, district to district. What we know, we've dissected it, we know what we need to operate in a healthy way. And we've given direction that we're going to even be more painful in our cuts in administration. I think we announced last week that we're looking to cut $850,000 out of administration, which is way more than we really want to, and is even healthy for our organization, to be honest with you.
Do we know specifically what positions those are at this point in time?
We do.
I remember something being said about that when I was on the Zoom call, having myself a Lovejoy parent. Not specifically the titles, but more the area of expertise.
That's right.
Okay, so at this point in time, we're not releasing names, just the area of expertise.
That's right.
Okay.
Correct.
Will those later be released out?
So there's a process that we have to follow. It's in board policy that we're doing that in. And so we identify the need to make a reduction, and then we have to identify the programmatic areas that would be impacted by that reduction. That's what the board is being asked to review on the 19th, is those programmatic areas. And then once they do that, then in May 10th board meeting is when we would bring any of those personnel units that are connected to that. And to be honest with you, it's our goal, and it's always our goal, that from the 19th to May 10th, that we are able to fill these people into open positions. So that there actually would be, even though we're cutting positions, we're not cutting people. And I think that's a huge distinction that to make, that out of all of this, regardless, when we're at the end of the day, I bet, as I sit here right now, that it'll be a very minimum number of actual people.
So help me understand that. Cutting positions, but not people.
Right. Through your normal year of attrition. So one of the smart things the board did is they put an incentive in place for staff to go ahead and notify us early, because for whatever reason, teachers typically wait until May to say, hey, by the way, I'm not going to come back next year. We're moving, or we're being relocated, or whatever the case may be. We put an incentive in place, the board did, in March, and said, let us know early and we'll give you this incentive. Well, we got a pretty nice response from that. So we know how many open positions we have for next year. And so any of these folks in the identified areas, the programmatic areas, can then be moved into those open positions of people that already let us know that they're not going to be here next year.
I'm going to let Stacy leave.
Hey guys, just one second. Just a reminder, that microphone will pick up everything that you touch on the table, so try not to touch the table. Thank you.
I'm bad about that.
I am too.
Forgot about that.
I'm usually kicking it down at the bottom.
A little foot tap.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see where we were at. All right. Okay. So obviously talking about where we're at financially, we have to make some changes, and you guys have to make that difficult decision. So let's start with what's already been decided. And that's to allow a certain amount of kids out of district into Lovejoy. So I know that these changes need to be made. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. Go ahead and explain how money is made by doing this.
Sure, and it really comes very easy. As I said earlier, about $8,300 per student is what we are funded from, that we get to keep and that the state gives us. So for every student that we bring in and have in a seat in the district, especially in those classrooms that are inefficient. So if we have a classroom of 16 and it could be 22, then we have a 6 student inefficiency within that class. So every student that we bring in brings that $8,300 with them. And so the more efficient that we run our classrooms, then the more revenue the district receives.
How many students are we looking at bringing on?
So the board actually put a cap on that.
Okay.
350 cap. So we won't bring any more than that into the district. However, that cap will move, or not the cap is the cap, but the amount of students within that cap will move based on our own residential growth. So if more of our students are generated here within Lovejoy, then that 16 seats goes to 20 seats. That means there's only 2 open seats.
So it alleviates any worry from people in the district to say, well, will there be any room if someone new moves in? Yeah. Will the kids who were paying tuition earlier when that was allowed out of district, is it true they will be grandfathered into this program?
It is true.
That's true. Okay. Will kids who are allowed into this program be allowed to graduate within Lovejoy?
As long as, and that's part of the restriction too of how many students we can take, because we don't want to bind ourselves in a way that we won't have enough space available for them in 3 years, 5 years, or 6 years as they matriculate through the system. So we want to be sure that we do it in a way with our demographic data to make sure that they can make it through the system. If they continue to meet our academic requirements, our attendance requirements, and our discipline requirements annually. So each year they have to reapply and meet those 3 areas of criteria. And as long as they continue to do that, then they would remain in Lovejoy.
Brings me to my next question. What standards do you plan on using to ensure that those requirements are met?
Yeah, so it's testing data, and if they don't have recent tests, then they have to pay to go get it to be tested to make sure that they can keep with the academic rigor that we have in the Lovejoy programs. And then the attendance data is certified by the school that they're coming from, as well as the discipline data is certified by the school that they're coming from. So if any one of those three areas aren't to our standard, then unfortunately they're not an applicant.
Anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add that it's the exact same. It's the same model and program that we installed in 2013 with our current scholar program, Lovejoy Scholars Program, where they were paying tuition. And so if somebody's not meeting those criteria, they can either be exited and not renewed for the next year, et cetera. So it's the same exact process. And then we add that we also have studied other districts and other high-performing peer districts like Carroll ISD, like Eanes ISD. In San Antonio, you've got Alamo Heights, very similar districts from the same type of demography. And each of those does an open enrollment transfer program. I would call it open enrollment. It's a transfer program. And they've had a lot of success. And the reason that these high-performing schools do it is to help supplement financially some of these enhanced programs, just like Lovejoy has done with our scholars tuition program. So that's really the backbone behind this. It's part of one of the pieces to the puzzle to help us continue to give our kids a differentiated Lovejoy education than they would get from any of the districts all around us.
Okay, so
they benefit us. And if I can add one thing,
of course,
because maybe you'll ask this question or not. I get the question all the time. Well, what about home values? If you can live outside.
Oh, and we're going to get into that too. No, but go ahead and you can say.
No, well, our home values are actually bolstered by continuing the unique programs of Lovejoy. What makes Lovejoy so special and unique? That's what's frankly has driven up the demand to get in Lovejoy, because people want their kids to be associated with the very best of the best, and they get that in Lovejoy. It's unique, but so. If we go the opposite direction, which is dilute the academic program, that's where, at least N of one, but that's where I believe that we would see a hit to our home values, is when we stop offering things that make Lovejoy unique and just start offering just what everybody else all around us does.
So that's one thing that's already been voted on, approved. One of the main topics, I would say, at the school board meeting a couple days ago was what is in the works, what is being proposed and thrown out there. And one of those is to take away one of the elementary schools. Lovejoy Elementary School was the one that was selected. So my first question is, when did the idea of possibly eliminating a school come to your attention, either to the board or just in general to the district?
Yeah, so really, I would say in January of 2020, is when our last demography report was done. And so that was literally 2 to 3 months before the pandemic hit. And in that report, the demographer went ahead and lined out what the implications were of the rising home values within the district. And one of the things that she pointed out was, since 2015 to the time that the report was delivered, that our established neighborhoods, our built-out neighborhoods, were declining in our kinder through fourth grade enrollment. So we were seeing a decline in it. Not only a decline in that, we were seeing in their research a decline in the number of families that were choosing to also sell and move out or exchanging the home with other families. And so those two items alone is what has led us down to this decline of enrollment within our K-4 program. The district as a whole doesn't have a decline in enrollment as a whole. Where we're seeing it is primarily at the lower grade levels, and we're seeing the increase on the upper grade levels, our secondary grade levels. So that decline enrollment at K-4, it just so happens that about 2024, 2025 is when we should have been having the conversation about having to look at how many elementary schools we need to service the number of students that we project we're going to have. I think COVID and the increase in home values has accelerated that conversation a whole lot quicker. And so as we look today, we have about 1,200 students, K-4 today. If we age all of those students up and we assume the same number of kinder students that we have today, we'll have 1,100 come August. That's 100 less. And let's say we get that 100 less. 1,200 students, that's about 600 for 2 schools.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our capacity at Puster is 650. Our capacity at Hart's 600. If we had 1,200 students like we do today, we could easily educate those kids in 2 campuses. So there's some inefficiency in our K-4 model. And that's by dividing them out over 3 campuses. We're paying 3 nurses, we're paying 3 librarians, and these are great positions and we need them. But we can do it on 2 campuses and only have 2 of those expenses. And so overall, when you're protecting the 4,200 student population, then you have to remove those inefficiencies regardless of where they're at. They just happen to be at our K-4 program.
So how was it that you came to the conclusion that Lovejoy Elementary specifically needed to go? Was Puster considered? Was Hart considered?
Absolutely.
Some people would ask, were the intermediate schools and the middle schools considered?
Yep. So yes to all of that.
Okay.
And let's just dive right in.
Yeah.
So Puster is the largest capacity of the 3 campuses. It makes more sense to keep your largest capacity school operational. So that as your enrollment fluctuates, you can fluctuate with it. Lovejoy Elementary is centrally located. There are too many kids that live in the Puster zone in the K-4 to pull all of those students down into Lovejoy Elementary without pushing some kids out of Lovejoy Elementary. So Lovejoy Elementary, if you look at just the bare numbers of how many kids are in it, then there's not enough capacity to leave 100% of the Lovejoy kids and the Puster students. So if Puster moves down, then whoever is on the south end of the Lovejoy attendance zone is pushed out. Same thing for Hart. There's about the same number of kids at Hart as there is at Puster.
Mm-hmm.
So as the Hart kids move up and they were put into the same school with Lovejoy Elementary, there's not enough space for all of them. So if they move up, then the northern section of the Lovejoy attendance zone would be pushed out. So either way, any of those models, that Lovejoy Elementary has to be split in some direction.
Okay. There are some questions you can imagine about this topic. So if you don't mind, let me read some of those that came in. Part of the justification for closing LES is that the district overall is projected to see declines in enrollment due to families with younger children deciding not to move into our district. If LES, Lovejoy Elementary School, is indeed closed, how will this not result in a self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense that families with younger kids will no longer view the neighborhoods that surround Lovejoy as a desirable place to live? One of the features that attracts families with younger kids to the district is that they have an option of living in a home that has walking access to their elementary school campus.
You know, let me jump on that one. What's interesting about that is even though the walking access is there, it's very minimal. We could go out there and well, of course today it's raining, so it's not going to look that, but it's very minimal. Secondly, I get what they're saying, but back to what the demography report says, we're seeing a decline in enrollment because families with young kids can't afford to move into the neighborhoods that you can walk to from your K-4 to a K-4 campus. That part of it doesn't change. The home values there will still not allow a young family that typically has young kids the ability or the affordability to move into that neighborhood. So with that, I would love for kids to be able to walk to school. I would love them to ride their bike to school. And we have some, don't get me wrong.
Right.
Yeah, what would you estimate walk to school of our Lovejoy or our elementary school population? How many do you think?
I would say maybe 10%, maybe 5%, somewhere in there.
I see some right behind Hart that are walking or riding their bike around those neighborhoods right behind Hart. You see it there a little bit, but it's not most of our parent community and those kids don't live within walking distance anyway of schools. So we understand that's painful for the ones that do. I think that's something we do recognize that is a hardship because that's something that's been very convenient for them.
Well, and as you said in the beginning of this interview, you can never make everybody happy, and I think we all understand that at some point something's got to give, right? So in the midst, go ahead.
If I may,
Yes.
Back to the point though, if let's say we were to make Lovejoy Elementary and Puster the two K4 or K2 3-4 campus, we're still pushing some kids to not be able to walk to school, even in that model, because we're going to be needing to send kids either up to Puster or down to Hart from the same zone that they can walk from today.
Could I add one other, just a bit of data? From that demography report, we also saw that what we'll see from the individuals. So you talked about overall, there's going to be a decline in elementary school age kids. But Lovejoy, I think, had the deepest decline. Lovejoy Elementary, the deepest decline relative to the other two campuses. So that also is part of that equation as well. It's not just short term. It does make sense from a financial and efficiency model, but even long term, you would be forced into that position one way or another anyway.
Okay, fair enough. Yes.
Unfortunately, and I went to Love. This is my elementary school.
My kids went here too, and I know it's not an easy decision.
Well, I mean, I went to school here.
Don't
I started
age
kindergarten
yourself.
in this red building that we're sitting in today. So K to 6th grade. So it means something to me. So this is not a decision that would be taken lightly.
Fair enough. As you may or may not know, you tell me, a lot of parents in the community, especially parents who have kids at Lovejoy, are fighting now independently to keep Lovejoy Elementary School open. If anything, for just one more year, they're saying, to give themselves some more time to reevaluate everything. So correct me if I'm wrong. It would cost approximately $1.5 million to keep Lovejoy Elementary open, give or take a little bit?
Give or take.
Okay.
Part of the problem with that, I completely sympathize.
And that was going to be my question. Like, would you encourage them to do that? Or you see them making all this effort, I guess, and would you tell them if it's all for naught? Or would you encourage them, hey, there's a chance, so keep on fighting the good fight?
Maybe Dennis, I'll take a portion of this.
Okay.
And now I'm not speaking on behalf of the board. N of one, right? So
Got
the board has to weigh in on all of where we go as a collective board. But I see and hear, and I've had direct phone calls and conversations with people who are trying to raise money, as an example, and I applaud the effort around that. The reality is, I don't think we could get even anywhere near something close to $1.5 million anyway to make a change, or even the possibility of holding something open a year, knowing that inevitably we're going to be right back where we were anyway, right? The numbers, the realities on the ground are not going to change from that feasibility of that. The second thing I would share is that we also do have constituents in Lovejoy that are saying, you've identified an inefficiency, you need to address it. As a taxpayer, you need to address it. And so that's another part. While this community is so important, and we would never want to have to change the landscape of a building, of what we're doing there, the reality is, I don't think we have the timing to do it, and also I don't think we have the will of everybody in our community, because we do hear from others that want us to address the efficiency piece, unfortunately. And so we have to look at it from the whole. That's my, at least my N of one perspective, not speaking for the board.
Personal belief.
But that's, I applaud the effort, but I just don't think that we're going to be in a position to not take action to address the inefficiency piece.
Can I just play a what if game?
Yeah.
What if 1,000,000 to 1 odds they're able to raise this $1.5 million, give or take what the exact number may or may not be, by the next school board meeting on the 19th, and they present you a big old check? Would you consider
We'll consider
reevaluating
we'll always
the
consider a
options?
check, whether it's from the state or constituents. To be honest with you,
But if the idea for that check, you know what I'm saying, is to keep
Yes.
Lovejoy Elementary School open, would that be something you would consider?
yeah, I personally would have to think about the reality of that if that was
Okay.
staring me in the face. And again, I'm going back N of one. I'm not speaking on behalf of the board. I think it would just make that very, very clear. The board would have to make a decision on that reality. But until that was a reality, I think that we're working off of what we know, the facts on the ground. Here's the data. It is very unfortunate that there could be impact to some families,
Sure.
but it's going to be a positive impact overall for the district's health.
Okay. Did you want to add anything
I
to
do. One is we're not going to close Lovejoy Elementary, but we will repurpose it. I know for those that attended, it feels like it's being closed, and I get that. And so I'm not trying to throw semantics in there, but it'll still be the namesake of the school district. It will be an early childhood center, and it will actually help us achieve a goal that our long-range facilities planning group committee of citizens has asked and want
Yes.
us to do, and that's to remove the kids from portable buildings and to remove our staff from portable buildings. Put them into a structure. We have the space and capacity there, so why not move them in and get rid of these inefficient facilities?
Okay.
Can I ask maybe one thing to add, Dennis, around, because we've gotten I've gotten emails. I've gotten hundreds of emails, literally, that have asked, hey, don't close Lovejoy Elementary School. Our teachers, they don't want to all lose a job, all that. Can you maybe spend a little time on the human resource part of any decision that's
That's a
made?
good point, because I saw on social media there was a big debate of teachers were fired. No, they weren't. Yes, they were. So if you could clear that up.
Absolutely. So when you go through a reduction in force and you name the programmatic areas like elementary ed, then what the district does is we look at the whole, all elementary teachers, all librarians, all security officers, whatever the case may be. Look at all of them. And then in a board policy, which was set way before this, we follow that policy to the letter. So it tells you the exact criteria that you look at. So just because Lovejoy Elementary may not house the K through 4 program, and that may look different next year depending on how the board moves, the number of teachers from Lovejoy Elementary, you don't just go in and cut all of them. That's not the way it works. You take people and their experiences, their certifications, how long they've been in the district, and their evaluations, and then you put them all on the list, and then you remove the bottom ones, the ones that are at the bottom of the list, based on the criteria, and that's the ones that you would not, the positions you would not bring back. And like I said earlier, the goal would be that we have very few people in those positions because of our attrition, just the normal attrition in the district, which is the goal. And I think we'll be really darn close to it. But no teacher has been fired today. We have, obviously, if we're going to post out these areas that are impacted, we want to have had a conversation with those that might be impacted. That's all that has occurred up to this time.
Okay. See, that's why this is so good. Everyone gets to clear the air and get their questions answered. I wanted to touch on the subject of communication only because that seems to be another recurring theme out there in the community. And some would argue that, there's somewhat of a lack of communication. So do you two, either personally or speaking on behalf of the board and the district, think that for some reason the ISD and the board is inaccessible to the public?
I do. Let me answer. I'm here every day. But here's the realities. So think about this. Our superintendent leaves in February. So that creates a little bit of stir in the community,
Sure,
right?
sure.
There were some people that were happy and some that weren't happy. I mean, very unhappy. So that's happening. Then we roll into the 1st of March, and the governor says, hey, by the way, I'm going to rescind the face mask requirement. And that really created a stir in the community. Neighbors against neighbors kind of stir on there. All the while we're having budget conversations, but then our focus has to change based on where the community is. And so we spent the March 15th board meeting on nothing but face masks. That's it, the entire meeting. It was supposed to be an opportunity to work on budget in an open session in front of the community, the whole bit. So then that's delayed. So then we get to March 25th, and we're still dealing with a little bit of the lag from the decision they made on face masks. Mm-hmm. And now we're dealing with transfers. Well, don't do transfers. That's the worst thing you could ever do. And it's interesting now. It's like, no, please fill up more transfers. Let's try to save something else. But I think the message is getting lost because of all of the other chaos and thing that's happening in the minds of the community. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That as we are pushing forward, and we're putting out the information. I mean, the same presentation that you saw Monday night was on our website by Wednesday. That same information. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, I think we're accessible. I was speaking about the board. There's 7 of us. We're all linked in our community in different ways. Some of us coach youth. Some of us are involved in a million different things. We get feedback all the time from a huge number of people. Many of us have lived here for a long time, and so we continuously get feedback in general. We encourage people to please come to board meetings. I mentioned it the other night. I was so pleased, actually. It's a positive when that many people show up to a board meeting, because there's usually a lot of great detail and information that are at these public board meetings year round. I can't tell you how many times there's nobody there. And that, to me, is disappointing. We do put it out there. When we're having the meetings, it's on the website. We push it out through social media, mm-hmm. things of that nature. But we do value our community. We do value two-way communication. If we're emailed as a board, the board usually has one voice that'll speak on behalf of the board back to individuals. Mm-hmm. What we try not to do, and I know that people are like, you need to be on Facebook and some of these places and all our board members. Well, that's not a real good place to try to answer sometimes very illogical, far-fetched things that I personally can't keep up with the volume of all of that, even me personally. We are volunteers. We're trying to do the very best we possibly can. Mm-hmm. We are accessible. You can call us, you can email us, and as a board, but no one individual on the board can speak on behalf of the board. So there's constraints within that legally, but we do value communication. We try to over-communicate as much as we possibly can. And we find times like this where it's a hot topic, that one thing that always comes up, there's not enough communication. Typically, that means that you're not getting what you want in response. That's usually where we hear it from, is if it's not aligned with what their feelings or thoughts are, then there's not enough communication. And we get that. I'm very sensitive to that. But we want to improve. That's an area, even continuous improvement. We want to start potentially recording our meetings, things of that nature, so people can go back and review exactly what was said and shared. That's an important piece. And there's reasons why districts do it, and there's reasons why districts don't do that. But we want to make sure we've covered all of our bases so that it's not abused or misrepresented on social media, as an example.
I'm so glad, personally, that you brought that up. I can't tell you how many people were wondering, why aren't the school board meetings recorded? And I think it breaks down to, and I think most people can absolutely understand why, in many ways, you guys are too busy to be on social media answering each and every question. It's probably impossible to, like you said, to keep up with the volume. So if we're allowed to record
not just
those
questions, but allegations.
And allegations.
Like things that
there's a little bit of everything on there.
I'll tell you this, as a board, we always encourage, if anyone has a question or a concern, And it's on our board policy, actually. We have protocols that are on our line that we encourage as a parent, as a community member, taxpayer, go to your principal on a campus. If you don't get the response that you're looking for and you think you need to take, then contact our administration or contact people who are subject matter experts on the day-to-day. And if you're not getting anywhere with that, by all means, we'll try to intervene individually as a board, things of that nature.
What's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they, instead of reading the minutes from a board meeting or finding it online, if they want a conversation or a face-to-face? And I know you guys are busy.
Email.
Email's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. And email, I mean, if you know an individual board member, great. But if you would like to email the entire board, I respond right now how our protocol works, like the president of the board responds on behalf of the entire board, right? And so we give a lot of feedback to people. We get questions all the time. Hey, can you confirm this? Can you clarify this? And we're able to do that. And that's a great way. And if it's something that we think is resonating a lot, we'll ask Dr. Womack as an example in his communication. Put something out because we're starting to get some questions around something, and we'll put it out there to the entire community.
Do you think the board meeting on the 19th will be recorded?
No, because the board they would have to take action to be able to record.
For legal reasons?
Yeah, and because, yes, but they have not made that decision to record meetings.
Do you want to share it all? I mean, maybe we're getting into too much detail around it, but some of the reasons why certain districts they do record and other districts have decided not to because of the abuse of it and technology now to skew some things. So
that's really we're not required to record in Texas. Some districts are, but it's based on the size of the district and the number of students. It's based on student size. So Lovejoy doesn't near that number whatsoever. Secondly, there is some cost associated with the archival of that media and then being able to pull it back up. But as you know from just setting up for this interview, there's certain equipment that you need specifically for a recording versus just broadcasting a live meeting. And so there's that expense that we would need to go through. Not that someone wouldn't be willing to, I could hear somebody saying, well, we'll donate it.
Or can't you record a Zoom meeting?
You can, but again, it comes back to the quality of the recording. Do we have the right tools in place for that? We still get complaints today about our Zoom meetings, and I can't hear, especially when the public comes up because they get so far away from the microphone, they won't talk into it. It's those types of things that really, I think, impact the quality. But to Mr. Collins' point, that when you record, people can take little clips of it and really use it in the wrong way or out of context. And we see that in a lot of political advertisements during national elections, even in some state elections. But that's some of the concern with it. I wanted to go back to one thing about accessibility, if I may, and that is when times like this, there's a lot of questions or not. We try to address as many as possible, but when people say, well, he's inaccessible, the reality is on normal times, that's not the case. But during times where you've got 1,000 people that want to meet with you physically, that's just not reasonable to make yourself accessible to all of them. You try to do as much as you can and try to bring them in groups and have those conversations. And that's why the board chose to have a town hall style meeting, is let's just bring everybody together, give them an opportunity to share where their concerns are, ask questions, and then we capture all of that and then turn around and give them a written response even on top of it. So I think when you have a hot topic, it does increase demand for your time and attention. I will tell you, I've done nothing this week but respond to emails, most of it in the evening hours.
I believe it.
To respond to emails, and I'm still probably 200 behind.
Yeah. I believe it. There's been a lot. All right. Home values. what everybody is invested in and what they want to know. So some good news just being part of the Grisak group. Home values, it's crazy how great the market is right now, especially in Lovejoy. Talking with Tom Grisak, the owner, just 12 months ago, the average house, the price per square foot was well below $200. Now it's well above $200. So I guess the root question everyone wants to know is, with all these proposed changes and things going on, do you think it's going to change home values in Lovejoy?
I think I think that the actions that we're taking to protect the integrity of the enhanced program is what is going to protect those home values and continue to see it grow. I get calls every day, people wanting, the demand to get into our district is unbelievable, even at high prices of homes. And I personally believe that we're making decisions that are going to protect the integrity of that enhanced experience that our kids get, because you can't get it anywhere else. There are great school districts. I don't want to misconstrue. There are great school districts, but they're giving a basic education. Lovejoy is very unique. I hear it all the time from parents that kids have graduated saying, my kids were so prepared for the future. They got such a well-rounded experience. We also hear it from people that move here, whether from private schools or other school districts. They come to Lovejoy and go, I don't know if people in the district who've been here a while realize how good a district it is compared to wherever they came from. We hear it literally almost daily. And I could probably every school board member hears that. And so we know and believe that we are making the decisions that are going to protect all of our people that live here. There's no question about it.
Did you want to add to that, Dr. Womack?
I would just add that I think as families are shopping communities to live in and shopping homes, that Lovejoy is a value add to that. We may not be the only value add. I think the community as a whole has value, and some of the neighborhoods that people choose to live in, they have some similar experiences or ideology. And so I think but the school district has value, and I only see that increasing home values.
I did want to mention something, if that's all right with the two of you, just looking online and trying to get a consensus of why people might be concerned about their home values. And it doesn't sound like there's really any reason to worry about anything. But one young mom wrote in and said that they recently moved to Lovejoy. We did not represent her, but another agent had said, Lovejoy is great, which it is. School sizes are very small. So if it ends up going to 2 elementary schools where I think you had mentioned currently some classrooms are around 16, that could go up to 22. She's concerned about that. Any comment to the concerns of parents who might think, well, we used to be small classroom size and that was great, and now it's going up to 22.
Now, we always have it at 22. That's not a change. And most of our classes are, because we are efficient in our operations, even with the 3 elementary schools. Inside of those schools, it's not uncommon, and most of our parents know this, is that we will close a grade level at a campus because we're not going to add another staff member when we have seats available at another campus. And so we do an intra-district transfer. We push a kid out of the Heart Zone to Puster, for example, because that's where the seat is available, and that's the most prudent thing to do financially. Instead of adding a teacher and then splitting kids up in the middle of a school year, taking them from the teacher they already have become to love, the mom's already and the dad's already invested their time and energy into that classroom, that we're just not going to do that. But as a new kid comes, if we've closed a grade level, because they're all are at 22-1, 22 students in there, then that's what we do. We put them where we do have capacity or availability. So the 22-1 or the 22 is not new. That's always been in place. It'll continue to be in place. Really, the issue here is we're not going to have a campus with 200 kids on it. Not that we have that today, but we're not going to let the enrollment decline to a level where each of our elementaries only have 300 or 400 kids apiece, when we could fit that same number and be more efficient with 2.
Excellent. I want to wrap up with giving both of you a last chance to say anything you want to the people viewing this interview today, whether it's to clear up the air on something, a specific topic, how you may feel misunderstood, or just in general, what you feel the Lovejoy community needs to hear at this time.
Let me go first because he's much better at speaking, and that way he can clean up and get his thoughts together. So I would just say this: I'm finishing my 16th year in Lovejoy. I came in 2005, July of 2005. When I got here, we were doing a community build of a playground out here at Lovejoy Elementary School, a wooden playground. And that was part of my first duties on the job, is to come in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and get out there and work with the community. And from that time, that's what we've done every year for 16 years, is roll up the sleeves, get in with our community, and build a program and build buy-in to what our kids are doing, because our kids are amazing. The kids that the parents send us are unbelievably talented. We just want to help them identify those talents and then enhance them and help them reach their fullest potential that they have possible in them. It's so cool when kids come to us in a board meeting and we hear about, I didn't think I liked art. I never wanted to take an art class, but I had to take an art class at Lovejoy High School. And oh my gosh, it opened my eyes. Now I'm going to the Dallas Institute of Art. And it's that type of experience that we're providing our kids every day that just gives you goosebumps when you think about it, that they're finding their passion within the experiences that we provide that they would have never thought they would have had. Because they had the opportunity to do that in this structure. And our K through 4 kids are amazing as well. I'm so impressed with the level of vigor that they put into their work, and their scores are amazing. And when you look at our K4 kids, they come to us with their basket already mostly full, and our teachers just add on top of that to the level that's just unbelievable. We know for a fact that our teachers are a blessing and that they're amazing, and they provide so much more value because of the way that we go about our interview process. It's not easy to become an educator in Lovejoy, and we don't say that apologetically. We say it because we really want to vet the candidates as much as possible so that we can bring in the most talent that we can bring to every kid. So it doesn't matter if you attend school at a building on the north end of the district, attend school in a building at the south end of the district. You're going to get that same quality education, that same quality instructor, regardless of where you go. I would hope in the 16 years that I've been here that there's some level of trust in the community. Just look at the history of Lovejoy from 2005 and our academic success, our athletic success, our fine arts success, the success of kids individually. Look at our graduates. Look at all of these other factors, our AP scholars, all of these, and tell us where we did not meet the mark in the last 16 years. And I promise you, we're not going to make a decision that creates disparity in the next 16 or 20 years.
Chad?
That's very well said, Dr. Womack. Have had the chance to work alongside Dr. Womack for several years of his 16 years, and without question, we've got some of the most amazing people, and that will continue. The level of rigor we put behind not just hiring our teachers, but the development of our teachers. It goes beyond. That's one of the other expenses. We spend more in developing our teachers, and that's a critical important because we care about our kids. And we care about every taxpayer, but I can promise you the lens is the kids first all the time. And even in a decision like this, and Dr. Womack said it great, our focus is going to be continue to raise the bar to give our kids the most incredible experience, better than they could get if they were somewhere else. They deserve it. Our parents pay a lot of money to live in Lovejoy, and we want to give them the return on investment for their kiddos. So I look at the kids like they're all mine, and I look at through a decision like they're all mine. And so I'm thankful to have the opportunity to serve in our community. Not everyone will like every decision that the board makes, and we totally get it. But we value everybody's opinion. We truly do. Then we're going to continue to try to make decisions that we believe impact the whole to the best of our ability. So thank you for letting us share a little bit today and kind of negate some of the confusion. We may have added to the confusion. I don't know.
Let's hope not.
But reach out, send those questions in. I love the fact that we did the Q&As and all that. Keep bringing questions to us. We're better when we're informed.